The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence. While generally considered safe for work by way of content, some language may be considered offensive by more sensitive viewers or listeners.
Existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kinda somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NBBN. The focus is on you. By Andrew Scott Media, making your media matter. And by the kind support of our viewers and listeners around the world via Patreon. Create on your own terms. It's season 6 of whatever the hell this is, apparently. Wait, you knuckleheads have 5 previous seasons of this thing? Wow, I need to get caught up. Oh, and FYI, I know I'm the new guy and everything, but I didn't get the email about Office Hawaiian Shirt Day. Just saying. Does HR have my correct email address? You know, the one at prodigy.net? They do, huh? Okay. Anyway, let's get whatever the hell this is started. Here's your hosts, Andrew, Robert, Dr. Mark, and everybody's favorite cabana boy, apparently, Chris.
3, 2. And hello and welcome back to the 6th season of Keep Your Hat On.
What?
I am Andrew Scott, along with my good friends Ty, Robert Anthony, and Christopher Vacano. And of course, Dr. Mark C.E. Peterson. How you doing, guys? It's been a little bit, eh?
Yeah,
just good.
I was waiting for the crickets.
Crickets are post. Crickets are always in post.
Production.
We've actually gotten pretty good about not letting the crickets creep in
and I
and take
appreciate
over.
that diligence on my behalf. So we're gonna kind of be steaming through stuff here. Dr. Mark has a very important gig to get to, a pre-gig, I would say.
Yeah,
pre-gig, yeah.
He's a gigger.
Scrimmage.
So, I think the number one thing to start talking about, because, everything old is new again. COVID's back. I will briefly tell you again, a lot of our listeners and viewers know that my kid is a professional epidemiologist, and they're saying, yeah, it's a real thing. So make sure to
have we heard anything about that news stream? That news stream?
That's what the news. That's what's going on.
There's actually 2 new strains.
Yes, and we're seeing it in the wastewater. Unfortunately, everybody now thinks that COVID is in the past, and we don't need to worry about it anymore. And it's just a flu. It's not. People are still dying, and now people are dying at twice the rate they were up to a month ago. Both strains are being detected in the UK. At least the primary new strain, and I'll be putting the big alphabet soup name of it down at the bottom of the frame. But that has been detected in, I believe, 7 nations, including the United States.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
we
stopped doing a lot of regular testing, and so a lot of monitoring is lacking for us right now. And really what we're primarily dependent upon by way of noticing these changes is wastewater detection, where they do cultures on wastewater every day, and they see what's present and what's not, and they have detected it here in the United States. And CNN ran an article, I think yesterday or the day before, that said, I think the slug line of the article was, "Why does everybody have COVID?" And so it is a big thing. And I think I know right now 3 people in my bubble have COVID again.
Yeah.
Really what we did here in our bubble, me and Chris, we went and had our young college student get vaccinated with just the currently available booster vaccine. because he's the one that most regularly goes out and interfaces with the public. But my partner and I are going to be waiting on the new version of the vaccine, which should be out. I think they're saying they're ready to roll that out third week of September. So by the time you're listening or watching this, go get that juice. Talk with your healthcare provider. Make sure that it's for you. New stuff.
Yep, I got the existing one just because I'm kind of out into the public, but I've got my vac for this year. Two things are going to be bad this year. I hope not, but
but I agree with you.
One being COVID, the second being flu, especially as we are being or a large part of us are being pulled back into the work environment.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and the flu vaccine is already available.
Exactly,
which is great. But I mean, and it's funny because this morning I was pondering this whole drag people back to work movement, and I saw some articles about it recently.
This is about management.
This is about money.
I mean, these articles were trying to rationalize and make excuses about, the sense of community and teamwork and all of that has gone down, so we really need people back in the office. And it's like, no, because you saw massive, real concrete data that in the early days of the pandemic when
people
everybody
perform better. People are more effective. They're more effective at their jobs because they're no longer pulled off task by somebody who could have sent an email. Or
office grab ass, or whatever's going on, right? And productivity goes way up.
Lies. Oh, lies!
So this thing about, teamwork and the ability to train up and advance and all of this, it's like, excuse me, home-based businesses are a growing thing. I mean, massively growing thing. And as a home-based business owner, I have no problem getting training, education, and advancing my career. So,
Chris,
it's all a bunch of bullshit.
It is.
I don't know that I completely agree with that. I think that there is something to be said about socialization, about seeing those folks at work, and you can pick up some habits. You see somebody else with a work habit, you can collaborate a little bit easier. So I do understand that, but I don't think that should warrant an all-out push to pull people.
There was some New York Times stuff about the millennials are all kind of anxious to get back to the office just to see each other, for one thing. But what strikes me about this is, like, I always look for the money, right? And the other interesting thing, this was last week's New York Times, they were talking about the percentage of empty office space in Manhattan right now.
That's where I was going with.
What I didn't know was that a significant number of corporations lease their office space.
Oh, yeah.
Which I just assumed, if you're big enough, you buy the building. It's like, nope.
No.
That's all
in New York? No.
Yeah,
wait.
So they leased that office space, which is now sitting empty. And that's probably what's really going on here. That's what I would suspect.
The thing for me, and that holds hands with that is, I mean, if you come at this from a strictly practical, ledger-based point of view, if you've got a primarily remote workforce, your overhead and your operating costs are so much lower than they would be if you are crowding a bunch of dissatisfied people in a brick and mortar environment.
And then, but when these guys get into leases, they get into like 30-year leases. This is
typically not. Typically not. They don't. They do quick rollover leases because no corporation wants to be married to something like that for that long. Suddenly they go on a hiring spree and they do need to bring more people in. If you have to buy yourself out of a 30-year lease, you're essentially pissing the rest of your lease time away. You're still going to be on the hook for it, at least a large percentage of it. Most corporations like to. It all depends on the location and the holder of the lease.
And the language in the lease.
And the language in the lease, yeah. So the vast majority of large corporations do short-term lease of properties.
And Andy, I was about to make exactly the same point as you, that office space is one of the absolute largest cost centers on any company's books.
And also one of the best movies. in terms of comedies.
I will agree with that entirely. But I tell
Given
you
a
what,
flair.
we're going to jump out to a quick break. We're going to try to push through this because, again, Dr. Mark is a very busy man. But This is The Hats. We're back. This is season 6. And as we said hello to an old friend, when we come back on the other side of this break, we're going to say goodbye to a dear old friend. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. I'm Andrew. That's Dr. Mark. That's Chris. That's Ty. And we'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Bye. Where the fuck is my caffeine?
Well, I was thinking.
If I had my soda, I wouldn't be coughing. 3, 2. And hello and welcome back to Keep Your Hat On, the show where hell even we don't know where we're going to go. I'm Andrew Scott, along with my good friends Christopher Vicano and Ty Robert Anthony and Dr. Mark C.E. Peterson. And, you know, over the last 3.5 years since this whole adventure of weirdness began for all of us, you know, we've had to say goodbye to some really significant people in culture and in popular culture. And for me, you know, we lost some really important musicians in my life. People, of course, like John Prine and Toots from Toots and the Maytals.
Oh, yes.
Both been taken from us by way of COVID. But yeah, this one that was announced just yesterday, unfortunately, is hitting us all really hard, and we are decked out in Dawn apparel for exactly the right reason. We, of course, are saying goodbye to somebody that has been important into all 4 of our lives, and that, of course, is Jimmy Buffett. And I'm doing my best here to try to sneak in some Buffett music that will be YouTube acceptable. We'll see how that works in post. But, you know, I just kind of want to throw the floor open. Dr. Mark and I have some share of Jimmy Buffett, but you know, start with you, Chris. Kind of, where did you first sort of run into Jimmy Buffett, and how did he kind of earworm his way into your life as a music lover?
Yeah, interesting. You know, I wasn't real. I mean, I was sort of peripherally aware of Jimmy Buffett as a kid. I mean, Margaritaville hit in 1977 when I was 5. So as I was becoming musically aware, he was kind of already there. But he always seemed like, you know, kind of, he wasn't the sort of fairly narrow direction of music that I was interested in at that time. But I was aware of him, and, you know, kind of found his music sort of fun and amusing. When I really sort of connected with Jimmy Buffett was, I'd say, in the 90s, in my 20s, you know, kind of during college and post-college, where I just sort of started picking up, you know, from friends and you know, actually hearing and listening to things a little more deeply and opening my musical horizons.
Right.
I really found my way into Jimmy Buffett and sort of my entry point. I mean, Margaritaville, of course, was always there, but my entry point was a combination of Fins and Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Two of what Jimmy Buffett often referred to as the Great 8. You know, there were really 8 songs that Jimmy always had to play, and those were 2 of them. Of course, you know, the others being Margaritaville. That's no surprise. But Pirate Looks at 40, Changes in Latitudes, Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw? You know, Ty, what about you? How did Jimmy kind of get into your musical
always
life?
For me, always in the backdrop, right? So the song that I can remember hearing from Jimmy Buffett first was, of course, Cheeseburger. But in the late 80s, early 90s, I ended up going to, I was living in Southern California, Irvine Meadows was just a place where I just hung out, it seemed like. And so I got invited. I don't want to say dragged. I got invited to go see him at the Meadows. And if you guys ever got a chance to see him live, which I'm sure, Mark, I'm sure you've done that.
No, I never got
That's
to.
interesting. Yeah, you
weird.
just pulled the spoiler out.
Yeah.
It is this huge party.
The likes of which is hard to describe to anybody who hasn't experienced it.
If you've gone to a Dead show, you might have an idea of what that
I'm glad you brought that up, because when Mark and I were talking pre-show,
a little bit of a parallel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a different
that's kind
crowd.
Of where,
it's a
the
different
parrot heads, man. No, I know it. I know them all.
Between the parrot heads and the dead heads, there's some significant differences, but
there's a lot of commingling.
Yeah, if you
should think.
Yeah, absolutely, commingling is a good word. So it's kind of, there's this overlap contingent that is both deadhead and parrot head, and so you have that kind of party there. So
wait, dead parrot head. That's a confluence of so many great things.
God,
I'm rather proud of myself.
A third layer of reference.
Right?
It's pining.
It's pining for the bayou.
Too soon. Too soon.
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe. Is John Cleese still alive?
I wish to make a complaint.
Let's just make sure John Cleese is
Yes,
still
he
alive.
is.
I believe he's still with us.
But yeah, it was that very festive atmosphere that really got me to start absorbing that music. And that music has just been, we have certain artists that live what they sing, that live that life. And so that Caribbean, that's the sound of the Caribbean. That's what it means to just be a sailor and be out there and just be toes up on the sand and just digging it.
What's really interesting, though, for me about what you just brought up is something else that Mark and I were talking about pre-show, was a lot of people who aren't in that culture, aren't in that environment, might look at Jimmy as being a one-hit wonder. Us fans, we can rattle off tons and tons of B-sides and other songs and deep cuts, but most people are going to know him for his largest hit, which, of course, was Margaritaville. But the thing about it is that, even if he was a one-hit wonder, even if that was his only claim to fame, which, by the way, was not his first big chart-topping hit. His first big chart-topping hit was Come Monday. That's what got him signed, and that's what started paying his bills and got him to settle down and sit down and write songs. But as Mark and I were saying, I was saying, well, if that was his one hit, he turned that one hit into a friggin' empire. The Margaritaville restaurants and bars and all the other places that he can go.
He turned it into a brand for
exactly.
It's estimated that the guy died a billionaire.
Oh yeah, easily only a single billion, but
and I would say rather than a one-hit wonder, I think it's hard not to think of Jimmy Buffett as a novelty act. Because
I can give that
because
some
the music
space.
is so sort of focused.
Interesting.
And yet, to this point, what novelty act can you expand out and connect with people so?
Yeah, and
I
wouldn't say novelty. I understand where you're going with it, so I'm not trying to invalidate it. But I think what Jimmy did and what he was a master of was finely tuning that sound, because his sound is hard to elucidate on by way of genre.
Yeah, I don't even know how you. I don't know where you locate it.
Yeah,
what bucket do you put him in?
Exactly, and that's just it. I honestly don't think that there's one bucket. You might be able to take a bunch of little jars, put them in a bucket called music, and then because he's got SoCal influences in him. He's got Bayou influences. There's the Caribbean influence, steel drum, that sort of thing. And at the same time, there's also this kind of laconic, laid-back, soft rock thing. But he's also got some real belters, too. He didn't shy away from whamming on the guitar.
But isn't that the true mark of any great artist, right?
I think so.
You can't
I do.
You can't pin them and put them in just one bucket.
You can tell. You can also tell. I was just thinking about this too. Is and I hate the fact that I like Taylor Swift, but I do. And
no, you gotta
it's-
give it up to that girl.
And it's like where I was going with this is like the amount of craft and effort that went into the songwriting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like you see that with Buffett. It's like the songs they're all pieces of jewelry, pretty much. There's none of them are throwaways.
No.
I'm just laughing too. I was laughing about Margaritaville because Margaritaville is without any doubt my least favorite Jimmy Buffett song, but only for a very specific reason. It's the only time I ever wrote a fan letter, and I wrote it to Jimmy Buffett. Back in the 80s, I would trek from Toronto back to Mobile, and I should tell everybody too. I am I'm one Kevin Bacon away from Jimmy Buffett, even though I've never seen him. Which is that I've met his sister. I went to college with his sister. And I followed him 10 years behind at McGill-Tulane High School in Mobile. So it's like, and my dad knows him, which was even, I'll tell you that, I think I've told Andy this story. This is the funniest freaking thing in my life. But no, I would trek down, and then we had a sailboat, and we would, in the summers a lot of times, they would take the boat down to Destin, Florida, which was a great anchorage then. This is before they condoed the place. And I would sit on the boat for a couple of weeks. That was like my break, my vacation time was I just go sit on the boat and like turn off my brain for about 2 weeks. Except there was this freaking tiki hut bar down the harbor, and every hour on the hour they did a breathtakingly shitty version of Margaritaville. And it was like, if I hear that song, and I finally wrote Jimmy Buffett this, and it was just this one, it was like one sentence. So it said, "Dear Jimmy Buffett," I said, "I'm a longtime fan, and there's this band playing in a tiki bar here in Destin, and they're slaughtering Margaritaville. Would you make them stop?"
Get them to stop.
That was it. I never heard from him, so I don't know. This was about 1983, something like that. Well, I'll tell you how my dad knows him. This is part of the funny part of this. So he used to keep his sailboat in Fly Creek, which is on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay in Fairhope, Alabama. And Jimmy was from Mobile. Jimmy Buffett's from Mobile. And his family was still there. I suppose now they're long gone, but that's where they were. And
living
so
a better life,
one summer I go home and we go over to Fly Creek, and we're getting on the boat, and we're getting stuff ready and stuff. And I look in the slip next to ours. And there is this, it was like a 27 foot yawl, which not a huge, but it was a piece of jewelry. It was like all teak and bronze and it had wooden masts, right? And it was like, holy shit. And I remember, so I said, "Dad, how long has that boat been?" Because it hadn't been there the year before. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's that guy you know." And it was like, who do I know who has this boat? There's this piece of jewelry. He goes, "Yeah, it's that singer you like. He comes down here all the time. He rides his bike down here." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, we'll have a beer once in a while and just sort of shoot the shit. He's a really nice guy, but I can't remember his name. It's that guy you like. You know him." I said, "Dad, I have no idea who this is." He's that singer you like. It's like, wait, what? Jimmy Buffett. It was Jimmy fucking Buffett's boat. And so my dad knows Jimmy Buffett.
And even with that opportunity, you've never met him.
No, I met his sister, and that was by the way, if anybody's looking in, I don't remember which sister it was. It was at Thirsty's, just off the USA campus, about 1976 or 7. So it was early on in the career. But those are my Jimmy Buffett stories.
Yeah, I got to expect that your dad was a real breath of fresh air and delight for Jimmy Buffett.
I had no idea who he was.
Had no idea who he was, and just saw him as a regular guy.
Another sailor, by the way.
Yeah.
That was the thing. And it was like, and this boat, by the way, the thing that really impressed the crap out of me is like, first of all, it was a beautiful, if you've ever seen Hans Christian yachts, it looked like that, but it was a shrunken down little version. This was not like an ostentatious monster boat. This was a boat made, and the fact that, a 27-foot yawl, who puts a mast on it?
It was a boat for sailing, for a sailor. It was
for sailing, baby. Yeah. And it was like, that's right. It's like, wow, that got my attention too. And it was like, that boat is not meant for anything but joy. And Savannah, probably at the time, that was the daughter he wrote so much about.
I was going to say, Ty, my entry into Jimmy is similar to what you brought up. and that I kind of got in via the Dead. I was following, and I wasn't truly following the Dead. I was a Dead head and a Dead aficionado, amongst other things. You know, I was also very into metal and goth music at that time. So the late 80s were a weird time, right?
Yeah, but yeah, eat, drink, and see Jerry.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
But you know, that...
Wow.
I'll pay to hear that version. But the whole vibe of the Dead, as you were saying, really coincides well with the Buffett mentality, which is dance while you can.
Yeah.
Dance while you can, because the dance doesn't last forever.
Oh,
so
my
let's
favorite.
enjoy
I'm going to get this
ourselves.
plug in, by the way, just because
Do.
I'm thinking about it right now. My very favorite Jimmy Buffett song actually is La Vie Dansant.
It's a beautiful.
It's heartbreakingly beautiful.
It
and
really
especially
is.
as you get older, gentlemen, that song even more and more rings true. I think you guys have managed to live that way, but other people don't get to. But Mike Nesbitt on his little TV show, remember Elephant Parts, the TV show?
Yes, that was
He
awesome.
actually that's where he introduced that version of the song as the first time I heard it. You can find that on YouTube.
It is.
But
You can
that's
find
my
almost
very
anything
favorite
in-
Buffett song. Yeah.
So, Andy,
Mine.
so similar to the Deadheads, when Jerry died, right? Where do all the parrot
What happens to the parrot heads? You know, it's
What
funny
happens
that you bring
now?
that up. When I was getting ready for the show, making myself beautiful, I wondered that exact same thing. You know, the Dead and Company, however you want to refer to them now, they're still a going entity with a revolving cast of a number of big
they're
people
still alive,
that you know.
Exactly. Mickey's still alive, and Bob Weir's still
Bob
alive.
Weir
Bob,
is
and that's
still
just it.
kind
Yeah.
of carrying the
And so,
carrying the flag.
People that have jumped in with them are people like John Mayer playing guitar with them.
That's right, yeah.
And
Or Bruce Hornsby.
Bruce
Yeah.
Hornsby
Oh, I
is
didn't know
obviously
that,
the
huh.
most famous. Bruce was with
Bruce
them.
was
Oh,
with
yeah.
them before. Yeah.
Bruce was
Yeah, Bruce was in when Jerry was in.
when his big hit, That's What It Is, in what, 88, 89? He had recorded that while he was still the keyboard player for the Dead.
I didn't know that. How about that?
And that's really where he stepped out, but he's been back over and over and over again. I don't know if he's still considered an official member of Dead and Company, but Derek Trucks and so many other people. Joan Osborne had sang with the Dead for many years as well.
Oh.
I'm kind of wondering, Ty, if you're right in that something like that is going to grow up, especially because Jimmy left us in a kind of a shocking, surprising manner. If anybody had followed Jimmy Buffett on social media, they would have known that a couple months ago he postponed a bunch of concerts down in South for an undisclosed medical condition, but said that he was given the green light, everything was better, he's trying to get back in shape so that he can go out and do more touring, and he had shows actively on his schedule. And it was just announced this morning that Jimmy passed away from a very rare kind of skin cancer.
This morning, as fans around the world honor Jimmy Buffett, his family revealing more about his private cancer battle. The beloved singer, known for embracing a carefree lifestyle, passed away at the age of 76 after a 4-year fight with the rare form of skin cancer, Merkel. His sister Lori now telling People that the two shared a cancer battle after she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer around the same time. Lori, who is now cancer-free, saying, "We shared a club that nobody wants to join. I am thunderstruck that Jimmy didn't make it." Lori posting on Instagram that soon before her brother's death, "I told him I've known him longer than anyone on the planet. He smiled with those twinkling blue eyes and squeezed my hand." Also telling People that Buffett had to cancel shows because of his illness, but wanted to keep performing, and that love of music carrying him to the end. His final performance, a surprise for fans at Mike McFarland's Rhode Island restaurant 2 months ago.
I was in awe. You can't make that up.
The moment capping off a 50-year music legacy and empire.
Which, honestly, if you think about it, kind of goes, yeah. But when I first ran into him, the very first time I can remember anything about Jimmy Buffett was the summer Margaritaville hit. My dad loved that song, and I remember being at a a barbecue, probably a 4th of July or Labor Day barbecue. And my dad loved that song, and they were playing it, and he was singing along, having a Pabst, I think, at the time. No accounting for taste. But really, for me, I think the first time I was sat back by Jimmy Buffett as a songwriter was probably I had always loved Come Monday. I could feel the difference in tone with Come Monday from all his other fun music, that there was some real subtext there and some real thoughtful consideration. But for me, it's always been, and again, a lot of people who know me, like Dr. Mark and you guys, know that I lived an interesting life, and not always via occupations that the IRS might not care about
or have ever heard of.
Maybe,
right?
Yeah. And so for me, it was always A Pirate Looks at 40.
Yeah.
But I've got so many, and this is the thing I think I want to go out on, because we're going to be wrapping up here in a minute, so Dr. Mark can get on the road. What's the song that you would pick that would be your tagline that I have now included on all our little fly-in lower thirds? We'll start with you, Chris. What's the song that you would pick to keep identified with as far as Jimmy Buffett goes?
I think really my Jimmy Buffett song, the one that I feel the most deeply, would be Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes.
That's a good call. That's a good call. Ty, you?
Yeah, it would be Latitudes or it would be Cheeseburger. I mean, I'm definitely that rolling by the seat of my pants. Just give me a cheeseburger right now.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
Changes in Latitudes got me through a lot, but it's La Vie Dansant. That's for true. Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with A Pirate, but at the same time, one of the things that Dr. Mark and I share is the memory of when he came out and stood up at my wedding in 2001. And we had driven out to Cannon.
Tried to stand up.
Well, yeah, you did better than I did. That's for damn sure.
Well, yes, everybody did, Andy.
Right, exactly. Who the fuck let me drive away from that wedding?
I don't know. I don't know.
Good thing statute of limitations has run out. But Dr. Mark and I, along with my then wife and a bunch of other people, we all climbed into cars, and in the middle of the night, we drove out to Cannon Beach to stand under the moonlight of Cannon Beach and smoke a spliff. And on the way back, Dr. Mark, me and my ex-wife singing Volcano and Changes in Latitudes at the top of our lungs, driving through the range back into Portland.
It's hard not to get into a group sing-along when Jimmy comes
and so
on.
In that regard, Mark, we kind of have to forgive the people in the tiki bar, because if it happens, what are you going to do?
They fucking love that song, man. I know. Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it.
Isn't it First Amendment right that you have the right to butcher a Jimmy Buffett song?
I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next, because again, we've lost so many big musicians. We've lost Taylor Hawkins, drummer from Foo Fighters. We lost Eddie Van Halen last year.
It's crazy.
This has been a really rough year for me with Jeff Beck and Robbie Robertson.
I was just going to say both Jeff Beck and Robbie Robertson, who was immensely important to me as well. And this is what happens when pirates look at 40 from 55 and 66 and such like that over our shoulders, going, God damn it, all our heroes are dying. But it's going to be interesting because, one of the big complaints about Eddie Van Halen passing away, and this is kind of childish in my mind, but everybody's saying, well, Taylor Hawkins had 2 big celebrations of him, and he wasn't as famous as Eddie Van Halen, and Eddie Van Halen hasn't had a tribute concert, wonk, wonk, wonk kind of thing. But it is going to be interesting to see, right? I know. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of grows up out of this, and if we do get some kind of celebration of Jimmy Buffett. But I think you're right, Ty. I suspect that we're going to get some kind, even if it is just like one final tour full of famous contributors, because he left with an expectation that he was coming back, and then suddenly he's gone, and nobody.
Yeah, there's such a void there.
In that huge family of people, and don't make a mistake, Parrot Heads are a family.
Huge. And so it's going to be interesting not only to see whether there's a tribute, but also to see where this family migrates from here musically.
Exactly. And, I think, one of the things that I was kind of playing with in my head is, who would you have primarily as the musical voice of that celebration? Obviously, it's going to be a cavalcade of stars, right?
Yeah.
But the one voice that jumps out at me as being workable, both by way of voice, musicianship, and personality, is like Jack Johnson.
Mother, Mother Ocean, I have heard you call. I wanted to sail upon your waters since I was 3 feet tall. 'Cause you've seen it all. You've seen it all.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be about right. You need somebody kind of in that that more folk rock kind of vein.
I can see people like Dave Matthews getting involved, that whole jam band scene, because honestly, if I had to pick a genre, jam banding is really where more like minds and musical cousins of Jimmy Buffett are to be found today. But the sad truth is we're saying goodbye to people from our generation and the generation that bookends us, and it's tough. But he left us so many incredible memories, and that's just it. Each one of us here in this show, and each one of you guys out there listening or watching, you probably have a particular memory of your life that is connected to Jimmy Buffett in some way, because these are our generations, and this is the legacy that was left behind.
Only tributarily, I realized yesterday, Robert Plant is 75 years old, and he is the youngest.
Right, I was just going to say, Jimmy's what, 79? He's not 80 yet. I think he's just 79.
Yeah, and so
but you're right.
He's here, and McCartney, and
recognizing
Ringo.
that we're going to have to say goodbye to these guys.
We've got to steel ourselves for the inevitable, and,
for what's coming.
And I think that's something that we're doing at this time in our life anyway. Either via our heroes or ourselves.
People we know.
All I know is that last week I was really feeling my age because I had a week-long flash of gout. That
oh dear.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes me think of.
Well, I wear this net on my head 'cause my red hair is falling out. I wear these brown orthopedic shoes 'cause I got a bad case of the gout.
But this is what happens, and all the more reason to dance while you can, because the dance don't last forever.
Let's go.
But I tell you what, folks. This is I was going to say this is the new and improved KYHO, but no, this is the old and slightly tweaked KYHO. But we're back at season 6, and once again, we're doing this whether you like it or not.
Yep.
But we're going to wrap it up here. Do us a favor, go buy merch. You can support us down at the NBBN Patreon page down below. Like and subscribe and do all that business. And yeah, share us out, man. Again, we're kind of proving that we're not going to stop. So you might as well just jump on the bandwagon. And really, frankly, until next time, everybody, wear the hats. Dr. Mark, Chris, Ty, Dummy here. And we'll see you next time, because we may end up miles from here. Might be Margaritaville. We don't know. But that would not be a bad place to wind up. But until next time, everybody, we'll see you later. Take care. Peace. Get your shots. Wear your masks again. Bye-bye.
Well, there's another chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a Narrow Band Broadcast Network production in association with Andrew Scott Media. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Christopher Vacano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott, along with help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vacano Creative. Christopher Vacano, webmaster. Available on the web at vacanocreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott Media, available online at andrewscottmedia.com. Hey, if you got questions, comments, or topics for the show, why don't you email the boys at talkback@kyhopodcast.com. And don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm the announcer, apparently, Richard Cranium. Thanks for listening, I guess.
NBBN.
The Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.